Owning an investment property is a lot of work. It takes care, time, and knowledge to ensure that everything continues to run smoothly. It is not something to take lightly. And planning ahead and planning out how you're going to do it will make sure that you end up being less stressed in the long run. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about if you should be self-managing your investment property or paying an agent to do it for you. Just as a reference, I actually own my own investment property and I have been self-managing it for about 2 years. My sister has recently purchased a property with her partner and they are also self-managing it. It can be time consuming, but just understand that if we can do it and we're now in the rhythm of actually managing these properties, it's not that overwhelming and it's not too time consuming. It's something that is quite manageable. So you've bought the property, you own the home, and you're now looking to get tenants into the house. What you need to do is put a plan into action as to whether or not you're going to self-manage the property or pay an agent to manage it for you. There are about 1.7 million property investors in Australia, and about 1/3 of these will attempt to self-manage these properties thinking that it's relatively easy and that they can cut out the agent and save themselves a little bit of money. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but managing a rental property requires a pretty in-depth skill set and knowledge, and it can also be a burden on your time, especially when problems arise on the property and you are required or to be on call essentially for 24 hours a day to fix those problems. If you have been thinking about self-managing, here are some things that you definitely should be considering and definitely should understand before going down this path. Firstly, do you have the time? There is a lot that goes into property management, all the way from getting tenants into the house, charging them rent and actually collecting that rent, being on call 24 hours a day in case problems or emergencies arise at the property. And the reoccurring thing that is generally going to happen is inspecting houses. You're the person that's going to have to carry out those inspections. I personally go once every 3 months and I do a quick clean around the house. I make sure to check all the fixtures and everything is intact and that my tenants haven't destroyed my home. I have pretty good tenants, so I'm very happy with them, but it's still a process that needs to be done every 3 months, which can take anywhere from a few hours to half a day. The initial setup is probably the most time-consuming component, and this can take anywhere up to 2 weeks, and if you're really unlucky, longer. This is the process where you advertise the home to get tenants in. You have to go through screening and checking that these people's references check out and that they're going to be good to be able to pay you the rent. And you have to make a decision to get the right people into the house. You have to fill all the paperwork in. It can be overwhelming and it is complex. However, there are resources out there which will definitely assist you in this process. Once you have selected the tenants which you want to live in your house, you need to sign something called a lease agreement, and this is signed at the very beginning of the tenancy. There are 2 types of tenancy agreements. The first is the periodic agreement. This is an agreement written, verbal, or implied for an indefinite period until it is lawfully terminated. And the second is a fixed term agreement. This has a specific start date and end date agreed upon at the beginning of the tenancy, usually 6 or 12 months, which can be renewed before it ends if desired. The landlord's and the tenant's rights and obligations under these 2 agreements are exactly the same. However, there is one slight difference, and that is how they are cancelled or how the agreements are terminated. A landlord must keep a written copy of any variation to the agreement and the actual agreement 2 years after the tenancy has ended. Now, a variation to an agreement can be things that you add onto the standard agreement that you would usually sign when moving tenants into your home. A variation would be something along the lines of me saying to my tenants, there are no pets allowed in this house. It is a pet-free house. Another example would be no smoking in the house. They're just 2 very common ones that generally come up on variation agreements, which is a little piece of paper which you tack on saying this is the extra things or extra rules you must follow to basically live in my house for the agreed period of time. As a self-managing landlord, you will also need to collect a bond. For rental properties where a landlord is charging $250 a week or less, they are not allowed to ask for more than 4 weeks worth of rent for the bond. As an example, if I was a landlord renting out my house and my tenants were paying me $100 a week, the maximum amount I would be allowed to ask for would be $400 for the bond. Where landlords are renting out a house and the tenants are paying more than $250 a week, the maximum they can ask for For the bond, the landlord, the maximum I can ask for is 6 weeks worth of rent, which is exactly what I did with my investment property. I asked for a bond, which was 6 weeks rent. Money that is received as a bond payment must be receipted within 48 hours. And on that receipt, you need to show the date, the names of the tenants, the location, so the address of the investment property, and the amount that they paid for the bond. You keep a copy of this, and your tenants keep a copy of this. And I'd highly recommend getting all parties involved to sign both copies of the receipt. Now, this is where some people get confused. As a landlord, you are not allowed to keep that money. The bond must be lodged with an organization called the Consumer and Business Services. And the way you do this is you go to the website and you actually deposit the money from your bank account once your tenants have paid it to you, and you lodge it online. You must do this within 2 weeks of receiving that bond payment from your tenants. And at the end of your tenancy, depending on if there's no works or any damage that your tenants have done, you will need to give them that bond back. So to carry out an actual inspection, you need to submit a notice to enter the premises form. Now, every state will differ. As an example, here is the South Australian form just on your screen, just to see what it generally looks like. And it includes things like the date that you're planning to go. It includes things like the address, what you're coming to do it for. So I generally would say I'm coming to carry out a general inspection of the home, and there is a checklist attached to the form which allows you to tick off things and walk through the rooms that you need to walk through just to make sure everything's all good. The thing to understand here is that you cannot submit this form more than 2 weeks in advance or less than 7 days in advance. So you actually only have a little window to tell your tenants, hey, I'm coming to do this inspection. And as always, you need to keep a record of these forms for the entirety of your tenancy. I have left a link as to the process as to how to start a self-managed tenancy here in South Australia. Just as an example, it will be very similar for any state in Australia, probably in the world, to be honest. There will only be a few variations. I guarantee that it is a very similar process everywhere. To get to the how-to guide for a self-managing tenancy, just go to Google and type in starting a tenancy and then insert your location. So mine would be starting a tenancy, South Australia, and the results that pop up will pretty much take you to exactly where you need to go for the state that you're in. As someone who is managing a property right now, I recommend self-managing if you have time to do it. My current lifestyle allows me to have the time to do it. I don't have 10 properties, so it's not too time consuming. I just have the one, and I find that it's a good thing for me to learn the process, understand how to communicate with tenants, and actually be involved in those conversations and actually get to see my house when I inspect it. I'm the person who really cares about the property. I care about damage done to the property. I'm not an agent who's just gonna come along and do all the essential stuff that they have to do, but not look for the little things. Like I really like to know that my house is in good nick and it's actually serviceable, and there isn't anything that is too major that could cause damage down the line. Obviously, as I make my way through my career, there may come a day where I do not have the time to self-manage, or I may look at investing in more properties in the future and again, not have the time to self-manage these properties. At that point in time, yes, I would probably pay an agent because that is a service that is provided for that exact purpose. But whilst I have the time, whilst I'm able to learn and actually stay in this space of managing it myself, I plan to, because it's good for me mentally, it's good for me as an opportunity to learn. And like I said, I now understand the process and I'm comfortable managing it. So if I were to buy another investment property, I'd probably be able to manage that one too. Everyone is different and every situation is different, but just understand that if I can do it, some regular kid talking on the internet, you could too. It's not going to be rocket science. It is a process, but you would be able to learn it over time and you'll be able to get it right pretty quickly. Just know that there is an abundance of resources out there for you to build your knowledge and understanding of how to do this, how to self-manage a property. It can be stressful and overwhelming. However, once you get into the swing of things, you won't regret it. It will be something that you will enjoy doing, and it's something that will be manageable in the end. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something about self-managing versus paying an agent to manage your property. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And as always, I will see you in the next one.